Now, Deputy President William Ruto has called out those in charge of security in Kenya, terming the recent Kamiti prison break that saw the escape of 3 terror convicts as shameful, in an apparent reference to Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i and PS Dr. Karanja Kibicho. The DP accused top officials of acting as youth wingers for some politicians and concentrating more on politics at the expense of security. His allies taking cue to castigate the government for what they term as a disregard of court orders. Alan Ochanda with that report.
Last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta delivered the State of the Nation address on 12th November 2020. Previously, Kenyatta gave the address between March.
We do apologize for that slight mix-up. Let's take the story by Alan Ochanda.
From Meru, Tharaka Nithi, and now Embu County, Deputy President William Ruto is leaving nothing to chance. And on Thursday, Manyata, Kianjakoma, Runyenjes, Ena, Nembure, and Embu Town played host to him, selling bottom-up agenda to the masses. Here, Ruto taking the opportunity to lead his allies in calling out security chiefs over what they term as laxity, following the recent escape by 3 terror convicts from the country's most guarded prison facility. The leader saying the ousted prisons Director General Wycliffe Ogallo was just a scapegoat and the CS should have bear the responsibility, wondering why the same was never witnessed when the Kianjakoma brothers were killed.
Magaidi wametoroka kutoka korokoroni. Hiyo ni jambo la aibu katika taifa letu la Kenya. Wale wanaohusika na mambo ya usalama, they should take their responsibilities seriously.
The prison commandant is a very small person to fire. Fire Matiang'i, fire Kibicho, that is where the buck stops.
The leader saying Matiang'i and Kibicho are solely to blame for the security lapse and dared them to quit their dockets so as to meet them on the political podiums. Mathira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua castigating the government for what he terms as open disregard of court orders and called on it to effect the jailing of DCI boss George Kinoti as ordered by the court.
Even if they have chosen to be youth wingers of some politicians, they should equally understand that the responsibilities they have been given of ensuring that every Kenyan is secure and criminals and terrorists are behind bars is a higher calling and a higher responsibility than to be a youth winger for any politician.
Lakini huyo Kibicho amewacha kazi kwa ofisi akaenda kufanya siasa.
Koti imeamua huyu George Kinoti for disobeying court orders aende Kamete afungwe miezi 4. Atakuchunguzia ile shida iko huko Kamete, kwa nini watu wanatoroka, kwa nini watu watafunguliwa, akitoka Kamete akupatie report uweze kutengeneza.
Ruto has been camping in the Mount Kenya East counties, appearing jostled by the recent tour of ODM leader Raila Odinga in the region, calling on the residents to rally behind him, saying he was a key pillar, thus a major contributor of the Jubilee administration's successes in its first term, but stalled in its final lap due to Odinga's entry, which complicated their matrix, thus slowing them. The second in command pledging to ensure the Big Four sees the light of the day under his administration. Ruto wraps up his tour of the region Friday. It all began with the prison break. 3 terror convicts escaping from Kamiti prison, the subsequent firing of the man in charge of the prisons, and now it is getting to the political altar, a section of the political class, now wondering why heads never rolled when the Kianjakoma brothers were allegedly murdered by policemen. Alan Ochanda, KTN News in the county of Embu.
It may have been a very busy week, but this definitely grabbed the attention of the entire nation. An escape from Kenya's biggest prison, Kamiti Maximum Prison, 3 terror convicts. And of course, a lot may be said, but you have to agree with the Deputy President that this was a huge embarrassment to the country. Coming just days after the explosions in Kampala, then 3 terror suspects escape from Kenya's biggest maximum prison, surely.
You know, first we need to start with the fact that the president did issue a statement saying the country needs to be on high alert. then you can imagine the country, the president saying the country is supposed to be at high alert, and then the people guarding terrorists happen to allow, and I use the term allow quite liberally here, 3 of them to escape, and then at the same time you've got bombs going off in Uganda. It didn't go very well for the country, especially given at a time where we are actually also hosting the United States Secretary of State. So the whole thing didn't look and sound right to everyone. And of course, the public interest that literally someone who is a threat, 3 people who are a threat to every single person in this country was running loose somewhere in the Republic, and we thank God they were found. But let us now look at the rather political angle that it took just then. I think it is quite comical, and let me just call out some politicians. You cannot be in court for abusing office, for embezzling funds, for not being able to explain where you got 12 billion, and then you want to lecture us about morality. And I think this is the things that Dismas talks about decency in politics. You can't be here talking about water. Well, you are a registered wine connoisseur. That's one thing. But also it is good politics, because it is a chance to take a jab. But the question is a jab at who? I think UDA needs to be informed that Uhuru Kenyatta is not a candidate for 2022. And there's a lot of energy spent campaigning against Uhuru. I don't know why, but it only then serves to consolidate what was his base, even if it's 30% now that he's exiting, to come against you. But also the question of where does the buck stop becomes very, very important in this country. And here's why. If you're a sitting deputy president and you say the buck stops with Matiang'i because he is the boss of the prisons commissioner general, then by that same logic, you are Matiang'i's boss. So at what point do we draw a line? I'm all for resignations, by the way. I think that people who do not deliver should resign, should be fired, should leave. But I also think that a cabinet has something called collective responsibility.
The same cabinet that has not sat for months.
It's not sat, but you have collective responsibility. That is the law. That is how it works. So if you're going to say the cabinet minister, the cabinet secretary is to blame, then by extension you must agree that you too are to blame.
Wow. Dismas?
Well, Kenya is a land of contradictions. Kenya is the only country where the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya attacks his cabinet secretaries and public servants of rank.
But it is good politics. You have to agree.
No, we are coming to that issue. Let's address the substance first. And Kenya is the only country where cabinet secretaries and public servants of rank attack their boss, who is the deputy president. So the Jubilee catfights we are seeing here only happen in Kenya. That the deputy president spends hours on end attacking his boss and attacking his juniors, and then the boss does the same and the juniors do the same. So instead of them serving our national and public interests, they're attacking each other. Essentially, there's this thing about cleaning the laundry in public. They're airing all these, some things that, which you can't even repeat on this fora. Because some of those statements which are made lack civility. But be that as it may, the deputy president has got a very valid point. That if you've been given the responsibility that you are in charge of security, you must deliver on your job. And you know what Mark Bichachi is talking about here is a fallacy in logic. That if the deputy president has been accused of ills, that he has no capacity to point out ill somewhere. No, he's got capacity. He's the deputy president. Well, he could be a ghost worker, he doesn't go to the office, but he's still the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. So he must point out these issues, because there are many other Kenyans who would like to point out these issues, but they have no capacity to do that. So for me, I think the president is making a very good point. Only that he only makes these points when they serve his selfish interest. The people he refers to as youth wingers. During the last election, when they were assisting him run his campaigns and win election, he did not say anything. But this time round, when it's on the other side, then all of a sudden it's realized, wait a minute, these public servants and public secretaries are in breach of the Constitution. But having said that, that's very good politics. And it falls under toxic politics, because you are now shifting the responsibility of all liabilities in Kenya to your boss and to Raila Odinga. So you are lumping them together. But in my view, let's ask ourselves a question. If this incident happened in another mature democracy like Israel or the UK or the US, what would have happened? That is the question we need to ask ourselves, because the biggest threat to our national interest and public interest right now is terrorism. So you've got 3 people who've been convicted for being a threat to our national security, our economic security, and they just walk out of a prison cell, maximum security, and they just walk away, and then they keep on walking, they walk for 3 nights. And the people who even established that these guys could be the suspects are not even the law enforcement officers, it's the ordinary villagers. Maybe we need to give a credit to the Nyumbakumi initiative and community policing, that these are the people who saw these guys, and then they made a noise. And then the last question, are they going to be given the 60 million, or again, the government is not going to keep their word? The reason why I asked that question, if the villagers in a certain village in Kitui, in fact, because you know sometimes the government lies, but let's assume that it's accurate. If in fact they're the ones who spotted those terrorist convicts and raised alarm, and the government does not give them 60 million, next time when the DCI tells us that these are the suspects and that there's a reward of 10 million, 100 million, Kenyans are not going to cooperate. So in my view, they should identify who is actually the person who came up with it, and they give them those resources. Yeah. And maybe instead of the resources going to somebody's pocket, they can be used for community projects.
Yes. Husband Wheeler, of course, the economy has been top of the agenda for all the big candidates. Anyone seeking the top post has been talking about either bottom-up, cash transfer, debt recovery, and all these things. But it is definitely an interesting twist when we start talking about our security on political platforms. That has really been missing. Husband?
I think, Fred, that is true, but there are a lot of critical issues that most of the presidential candidates are not addressing, because they don't easily lend themselves to populist narratives, and one of them definitely is security. The other one, for a certain clique of politicians, is corruption and track record, and that's why you have politicians who, when it suits them, they want to glorify the Jubilee track record and claim the credit. When it doesn't, they want to hit the Jubilee government for what it has not done, to accumulate some sort of political capital out of it. But I want to say this, that security and especially terrorism is a very dicey issue, especially when spoken to by public figures, high-ranking government officials, and more so when covered by the media. For the simple reason that terrorists are not in the business of killing people. Terrorists are in the business of eliciting conversations that would make governments adhere to their ideology and give in to their demands. And therefore, when you have very prominent people start attacking the government on how the government is handling terror issues, terrorists are actually celebrating, because that is essentially why they're in the business of causing terror. So that the public is so terrified that the public is moved to compel the government to give in to the demand of terrorists. Because the perception they want to create is that whatever we want from your government, the government is not giving. But for as long as the government is not giving, no one is safe. We will unleash terror indiscriminately. And the main point they want to make is that by unleashing terror indiscriminately, create that perception that this is a government that cannot protect its citizens. And therefore, it will come back to the citizens to start telling the government that, you know what, you don't have the capacity to protect us, and therefore the best thing to do for us is to give in to the terrorists. And it is unfortunate, that we are in this situation where not many people understand that when it is issues of terror, there is a gap in communication, because there's a sense in which the authorities, when they give information about the advances, the things that the terrorists have done, they're essentially glorifying terror activities and the terrorist agenda, which is what the terrorists need, So that gap that the government or the authorities all over the world live today is capitalized on by Twitterati, people who can access the digital platform. And most of the politicians who are critical, by the way, it is very unfortunate that these are guys who are listening to Miguna. You look at what Miguna is posting and people are picking tenets from what Miguna is saying. And I mean, Miguna is not even in this country. So hearsay cannot be used to attack the way we are handling terror. I'm not saying that this is a very, pretty situation that we are finding ourselves in when you have 3 terror suspects leave, our topmost security prison and they're out at large. But the fact that they were even arrested in itself tells you that at least something is done. But bottom line is how that is communicated, and the people who are critical, should be a concern for this country, should be a concern for all the citizens because of the traction that it is giving terrorists and the agenda that they're likely to push given that traction. And it's basically something that most politicians need to be a lot more informed before they open their mouth in public barazas to speak about them.
Yes, it's a very dicey situation. It's one of those delicate issues that any government can handle. What would you say about the government's handling now of the situation in terms of communication? Communication does not necessarily have to be written. It could be seen just by action. The kind of drama we were treated to, the arrest or holding temporarily in custody of the Commissioner General of Prisons, the ATPU running into that building, the transition within minutes, and the installation of a new prisons boss, that definitely communicated a lot in itself. The fact that even the runaways were caught within 2-3 days, it also communicated a lot. What would you say about the handling of the situation and what it communicates to the public? Should the public now feel more secure because the government handled the situation in that manner?
Well, one of the things that I would like to just remind Kenyans that security communication is very interesting, because if you have a good security environment, you've got nothing to say. If your home is safe, you will not notice your watchman because the incentive to communicate is not there. So by and large, this 9 odd years of Jubilee have yielded a more and more secure sense. Ever since the siekes of Lenku, I think the country has moved leaps and bounds in being able to contain terror. Now, the fact that there was swift action from the presidency in terms of dealing with this particular issue is good communication. It is something that Kenyans needed to see. Here's what I mean. If you are in charge of any prison, the prisoners, they should not escape come what may. You should know if that prisoner touches the gate like this, touches the wall like this, you should know your job is done. It's over. That's it, kaput. So the fact that that happened, and the fact that these people were arrested quickly, and the government was very clear in its communication that these people have escaped, immediately there was a bounty on their heads, immediately there was action, shows that this country takes the threat of terror seriously, takes the security of her people seriously, and this is something that Kenyans need to have. But at the same time, we must be aware that terrorism never sleeps. We've seen terrorists attack the United States. We've seen terrorists in the UK. And therefore, there is no region that is immune. Therefore, the vigilance aspect of it is important. And as Dismas pointed out, the Nyumba Kumi system and being able to point out that these are 3 strangers that are not from us, that could be a threat, that is very critical. So at the same time, whereas the government has communicated their ability to deal with the threat, there is also a big need to communicate to the Kenyan people that we need to be vigilant, and the threat of terrorism is very much here with us, especially if you consider the issue in Ethiopia, that instability affects Somalia. If If you look at the fact that Somalia is likely to go into another election, and then here in our country, we are going through another transitional year. I don't need to remind you what happened in 2013 in terms of how much terror there was. So we are in a volatile situation, and the vigilance not only of the security forces, but also of the people is critical.
Are we satisfied with that kind of communication?
Well, I think largely the communication was, I would give them 90% on communication, because the back of securing our lives and properties is domiciled within the presidency. And the president took charge by ensuring that there is a change of command. And you know, in the past, when public servants of rank perform errors, either of omission or commission, they go back home rubbing their hands with glee. So for the first time, the president has actually fired somebody. And one hopes that it's only not the change at the leadership, but the new one-star general is actually coming up with very solid systems to ensure that this does not happen. When you speak to people who've been to that facility, or people who understand correctional facilities, they are not able to comprehend how these three convicts actually got out of that facility. Nobody is able to understand it. And maybe somebody needs to explain that they go through those barbed wires. How did they fly out? How did it happen? You know, yeah, because you know that facility, you understand, is highly guarded. Mm-hmm. How did they make their way out?
It has 3 walls, 3 layers of walls.
So how did they make their way out? Mm-hmm. Would it be that because of those cartels, that they jumped into a prison van and just go throughout the gate? So that needs to come out clearly. Then number 2, the minister responsible was proactive during the entire situation, that he visited the facility and he promised to make changes. That is okay. But in my view, we've not seen sufficient heads roll. We should encourage the president to fire the people, either again by error of either commission or omission, who are responsible for that. Because again, we've been told times above number that there are a number of people who are not Kenyans with Kenyan passports, with Kenyan IDs, who have got a free ride in Kenya. That some of even those are terrorists have got friends in high places. You would remember that at some stage, then Majority Leader Duale said he was going to give out a list of terrorists. He's not done that. So these are some of the things that we need to revisit. Because if we don't do that, then people who have been entrusted with our security would lapse, maybe for monetary consideration, and then absolutely nothing happens to their lives.
Okay. It's definitely one of those big stories that we continue to follow, the reforms in the prison service as well. Let's take another break. When we come back, it's time to listen to your feedback. You get to call us and share your thoughts about what we've been discussing this morning.